Finally, it's very possible that during the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic, people were curling up with a book written by a very popular author, a St. Louis native who today is a mere curiosity. Well, a couple of years ago, we wanted to tell the story of this man whose life was marked by great success and mistaken identity. Imagine being one of the most popular novelists in the United States. And I don't mean a one-hit wonder, but a string of bestsellers over a 20-year period. The President of the United States is one of your biggest fans. But 100 years later, the country, the city of St. Louis, where you were born and raised, knows very little about you. Your books aren't read much anymore. They're not taught in schools. You don't have a star on the Walk of Fame. There is an apartment building with your name on it, but understandably, most people would assume it's named for the other Winston Churchill. They were not related, but they came of age at the same time. Winston Churchill, the American, was born in St. Louis in 1871. The other Winston Churchill, and there was a time when he was the other Winston Churchill, was born in 1874 in England. When he started writing, he had to use Winston S., or Winston Spencer Churchill, to avoid confusion. The British Churchill, of course, would become one of the towering figures of the 20th century, while the American would fall out of fashion. But in his day, well, to get an idea of that, we went to the Central Library downtown and up to the Special Collections and Rare Books room, where Renee Jones had assembled a whole shelf of bestsellers.
Churchill books for me here.
Yes, I have an entire shelf here for him. There are, and there are multiple copies of most of them that we have here in Rare Books.
This is Richard Carvel, which is his first big bestseller.
It was a huge, huge bestseller. This one is like the fourth or fifth printing here after 1899, but we see over and over how popular it was because it was printed so many times.
Right, so people kept reading it.
Absolutely.
Well into the 20th century, probably.
Big hit. Yeah.
And yet nothing in his early life would indicate that young Winston would ever really make a name for himself. He grew up in a house that was right about here on Pine Street, just west of Jefferson. His mother, a St. Louisan, died just a couple of weeks after he was born. His father, who was connected to the family business in New England, was something of a ne'er-do-well, charming but irresponsible, and he had very little to do with his son. Winston was raised by his aunt and uncle in their house here. It was back then a pretty nice neighborhood. They had enough money to send Winston to Smith Academy, the private school of the day, but not enough money to send him east to college. So Churchill took a job as a clerk in a paper company and hated it. He managed, though, to get a free college education by getting an appointment to the U.S. Naval Academy. He did well enough and was starting to write, and by graduation he realized this was not the career he wanted and resigned from the Navy. He moved to New York, got a job with the Army and Navy Journal and then with Cosmopolitan magazine, and he had a short story accepted for publication. He also married, and married well, and his wife convinced him to quit his job and write full-time. His first novel, The Celebrity, was published in 1897, a light, entertaining story that sold well enough for his publishers to ask him to write another. After the modest success of The Celebrity, Churchill moved back to St. Louis. His wife had some health issues. It was 1897, and he rented an office here in the security building. He came in every day and got down to work, writing what would become his first bestseller, Richard Carvel.
If you open it up to the title page, well, first off, you can see that this edition is autographed.
Yeah.
So we're happy to have that.
Set during the Revolutionary War, it was the first of 3 best-selling historical romances, a popular genre of the time. The next book, The Crisis, was set in St. Louis at the start of the Civil War, and Churchill had returned to his hometown to do the research. And now the two Churchills were well aware of each other, and when Winston S. came to Boston on a speaking tour in 1900, the American author invited him to dinner. The visitor accepted, and they would meet again in London. But they were anything but chummy, and the American novelist was always irritated by sharing his name and with the inevitable mix-ups. But the American Winston Churchill did get along well with another prominent politician. after Vice President Teddy Roosevelt read The Crisis, he wrote to Churchill to tell him how much he'd enjoyed it. He had one minor criticism about the main character, but said he liked the portrayals of Lincoln and Grant and the role of St. Louis's pro-Union German immigrants. They became friends and political allies. Churchill would be a dinner guest at the White House. He was doing well. He'd built an impressive home in New Hampshire and was involved in politics, serving in the state legislature and running unsuccessfully for governor. But he didn't quit writing. That was how he made his living. And the hits kept coming, a political novel, and then stories with religious and social themes. If you're curious about these books, you don't have to go to the special collections room. Other copies are in the general circulation stacks. But library records show most of them haven't been checked out more than a couple of times in the last 20 years or so. The Crisis, though, has done better. It's been checked out 64 times. Churchill didn't write much after his last popular book came out in 1917. That was his 10th novel in 20 years. His biography is accurately titled Novelist to a Generation, just not a recent generation. We wanted to make one more stop on our search for the American Winston Churchill, the book house in Maplewood. We called ahead, and Michelle Barron was ready.
So we've got a whole, here you go. We've got a whole stack of these.
But nobody's coming in besides me looking for these. Do they ask for The Crisis?
Oh, yeah. They asked for that, and they asked this one I've had people look for.
She doesn't put Churchill novels in the classic literature section where you'd find, say, Dickens and Twain, Hawthorne and Kipling. Churchill's books would go on the vintage fiction shelves with other popular authors who were writing in an emerging mass market.
Here is similar stuff. These old books from turn of the century. The 1890s was there was like just a big flood of publishing, and the bestseller and the novel became popular. People were really reading novels and fiction, and magazines were becoming really popular.
And historical fiction, I think, was really big around then too.
It was really popular, yeah.
Now, some of this, the appeal is how nice they look on your bookshelf.
Oh yeah,
right?
see that's really the main reason. A lot of people buy them just for the pretty gilded edges and the pretty bindings. These old illustrations are fantastic.
Yeah.
It's Howard Chandler Christie. People collect his stuff.
So any number of reasons you might buy the book. It might look nice on your shelf. Further indication that Winston Churchill was an author of his times is this later, cheaper edition of The Crisis. No famous illustrators worked on this one. It had photographs from the silent film that was based on this popular book. Today we might consider his books old-fashioned, with their sense of honor, propriety, and sentimentality, which is why books of the same era which weren't like that, Kate Chopin's The Awakening, Theodore Dreiser's Sister Carrie, were less popular when they came out, but today are considered classics. And Winston Churchill's books are decorative curiosities. A century later, there are far more books out there written by and about the British Churchill, so the mix-ups of mistaken identity and authorship are understandable by both buyers and sellers. On Amazon, you can find the 1910 novel A Modern Chronicle. It's about a clever and beautiful young woman from St. Louis seeking true love in New York high society. The real author would probably be irked, to say the least, to see that this one is credited to Sir Winston S. Churchill. The American Winston Churchill died in 1947. He hadn't written much for years and hadn't lived in St. Louis for a long time, but had kept up with his friends and family here. And the Post-Dispatch obituary said Churchill had donated to the restoration and preservation of the Campbell House. But he had no known association with the apartment building on Cabanny. It was built in 1927. It doesn't seem likely that you'd name a building for the man who, at the time, was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And when it was nominated for the National Register of Historic Places, the research in fact showed it was named for the popular St. Louis author, who was never really happy that he had to share his name, and who is now known, if he is known at all, as the other Winston Churchill.